our ability to understand what being successful are, and how we move forward need to be really questioned. To develop the entrepreneurial attitude or the attitude towards growth, we may not be able to make a difference. We always want conformity and discipline. Conformity and discipline make good employees, they don't make good employers. Going to delve into the topic in a slightly more practical fashion because that is going to help us make the real difference. So I hope that is okay. Before we begin, I have a question for all the participants, and I'd like for you to use the chat. And our host for the day will read out some of the responses because I'd like for us to set the tone. She very beautifully in her introduction mentioned, what her belief about success is. However, I would like for us to set a context before we move forward. So my question is extremely simple, and it's a very, very easy answer as well. If I am successful, and it's a reflective question, obviously, if I am successful, what will I have? If I am successful, what will I have? And I'd like the participants to use the chat and put in as many responses as you can.
Some say happiness,
Okay,
some say confidence,
okay,
satisfaction is there, peaceful life and happiness,
okay,
feeling of being worth,
okay,
time, contentment and joyful,
okay,
content in life,
okay,
happiness, the desire to be more successful,
okay,
new opportunities, respect, a feeling of having made each day count,
okay.
feel goodness. These are the most common
Common
achievements also.
answers. Okay.
Common
So I'm
answers.
assuming that most people are above 35 years old because these are very typically 35-year-olds and above the with after a certain point when you realize that success is not about having more but being more. But if you really do the same question with younger people, and especially between the ages of 13 and 26 and say up to 30 years, you'll notice that they're going to talk about, I would have made my first million, I would have bought a car, I would have bought a bike. There would be very tangible material rewards that come up. And this is precisely why our definition of success, our ability to understand what being successful are, and how we move forward need to be really questioned. So I'm glad that at least the participants in the group believe that success is not about the tangible rewards, but about the intangible internal rewards that we can carry. And that's a very, very beautiful place to start today's session because I think I can steer it toward that direction. As a teacher, as a parent, what can I do in a very specific or in a very systematic way to ensure that my children also go through this? So let's start with a simple story, and this is a story that I love using in all of my sessions because stories remain even when the session is over. And so there was this farmer that was who was walking through his farm, and as he was walking he saw a small egg. Now, though he was very, very good as a naturalist, he did not identify which bird's egg it was, because if he had known, he would have taken it to the right place. So the simplest thing he decided, he said, let me just leave it in the chicken shed. And once it hatches, I'll know what bird it is. And once I know what bird it is, I'll leave it where it's supposed to be. But like a typical adult, and many of the older people will agree with me, as a typical adult, he forgot about the egg once he placed it in the chicken shed. Small eaglet came out of it, and the eaglet did not know what to do. Just like the other chicks, it started following the hen that was there in the shed and was picking grain from the ground, eating the grain, etc., etc. And many days later, though he had grown into a really big eagle, he did not believe that he was an eagle. So a real eagle swooped down and he looked at the eagle that believed he was a chicken, looked at the pig and said, what bird is this? It's so majestic. So he said, oh, that's the eagle. It's the king of the birds. It belongs to the sky and it flies really high. It's a very courageous bird. So the eagle that believed it was a chicken said, oh, that must be a great life. But I'm a hen. I'm a chicken here and I belong to the ground and I'm supposed to eat grain. And I want this to be the beginning of our session, because I want us to understand that be it the education system or the parenting system that we use, we tend to actually place children in the wrong ecosystem, but we want them to reach the sky. We keep them at the level of the ground, picking on grain, but we want them to actually sweep, fly really high, swoop all over the place, stay on the highest possible ground and stuff like that. So I want us to understand that somewhere there is a problem in the way we are looking at raising children and educating children. And till we make that distinction and really understand what it means to bring up or raise a child to develop the entrepreneurial attitude or the attitude towards growth, we may not be able to make a difference. So, this is where I'd like to start with our school systems. I know there are many teachers who have registered. Our host for the day did mention it to me, but I would like to burst a couple of bubbles, because if we don't do that, I would not be doing justice to the session today. So, if you really look at it, I don't want to name names. I don't want to give any specific structure here, because I don't want to quote any controversy. But let's understand that the education system that we have right now is about 300 years old. Small policy differences have made small changes, but they are still not enough to change the entirety of what we are looking at. This 300-year-old system was designed by industry owners because they wanted children, or they wanted people to come into the employable fold, because when they started the large factories during the industrial revolution, they required people to be employed at the level of supervisors, at the level of workers, and therefore what skill sets needed to be given to them were what were designed within the original curriculum. This same curriculum went across the globe because it was very, very easy. It had a very simple model, which is called the assembly line model. Some of you will be familiar with this, but I'm setting the context for everybody to understand. So, what happened? The child came in as a raw material, and then it went to process one, process two, process three, like grade one, grade two, grade three. And then finally, there was a quality control at grade 10, grade 12, and then the child was put into the market. This is basically what happened. So, if you did not fit that mold, if you did not pass a particular a test at a particular level, which is called the quality control, you were considered a failure. And the moment you were considered a failure, you were considered unemployable, which was the worst possible discrimination that could be given to a person. So I hope I've set the context with this. So how do we do this in the classroom? We bring a child in at a particular age, we decide that they are ready for school. Technically, at 3 years, 3.5 years, most children are not ready for school. They experience extreme separation anxiety. However, we bring them, we separate them from the parent, and then we put them here. Neuroscience wise, this is the age where the behavior activation system is very, very high, which means they need a lot of exploration, they need a lot of discovery, they need a lot of expression. However, we as the school system activate the behavior inhibition system, which expects them to be in stress, to be quiet, to not express themselves, etc. So we do the exact opposite. And then suddenly at 13, 14 years, we bring project-based learning and say, you suddenly should be doing projects, you should be able to learn from projects, etc. Where they needed discovery, we gave them control. And then suddenly, when they do go inwards in the teen years, at that time, we want them to open up. So our system is actually skewed against how normal child development and brain development happen. I know that I'm saying something extremely controversial, but if we don't examine these beliefs, we may not be able to help children find success in life. That's where the mental health crisis and all of these things are coming in. And so the faster we understand, identify, and work with this, the better it will be for us and for the children, because the world that's going to be steered by AI in a couple of very, very soon, needs to have completely different skill sets, and we can't use skill sets that were prevalent about 300 years back. The second aspect of so the first problem with the system is that it's very quality control driven. No matter how many policies we bring in, we are doing quality control at the end of it, and we are deciding that some people are worth it and some people will never make it. And this is very, very dangerous. No matter how many people speak about no, don't discriminate, don't fail children, we still have this as a benchmark, and this is very dangerous. The second thing is we always want conformity and discipline. Conformity and discipline make good employees, they don't make good employers. Secondly, So let me give you a simple example of Michel Foucault. Foucault was a he was a philosopher, architect. He did a lot of study on schools, and he said schools and prisons have the same architectural style and functioning. So, for example, you have small cells in which one person is in charge. You have bells that decide, when somebody can eat, when somebody can go to the washroom, and so on. So, I personally call it the cells and bells model, which is, you're fixed. You're put into a small cell and then you respond to a bell kind of thing. So this brings in a lot of discipline and conformity. And conformity in itself, though it has a lot of value in certain parts of life, it is not really great when you need to lead and when you need to initiate, when you need to take a risk. A risk taking personality needs to be able to break that mold and go to the next level. The third thing that we bring in is, and unfortunately so, we tell children that you are open to asking questions, you can ask questions and things like that. When children do question the teacher, it is seen as an act of insubordination. And therefore, what happens after a few times when the child asks a couple of questions, we feel that, this is a very troublesome child. And I've seen, because I've worked in many schools, I know that in the staff room, teachers will be discussing that one student who asks a lot of questions, who doesn't listen to them, who says, no, no, this is not how it's done, etc. So the moment that child is blacklisted, for life, that child is made to feel that he or she is not good. And I don't want to bring in any specific incidents that have happened in the recent past, but sometimes it just goes out of hand, and a young child is often targeted for being enterprising, or for being smart, or for being slightly rebellious. I'm somebody who's been a victim of the same thing because I was not encouraged to ask questions. So after a point, I became a rebellious student because I realized that anyway, you're not going to listen to me, I might as well misbehave. And that was the only way that I could handle school, the pressure that was there. So the third aspect is where I don't encourage questioning. And if you notice, Einstein says, question everything. We need to question everything if we need to make a difference. And especially to be able to lead, to be able to build a sense of self worth, I need to be able to question myself. The fourth is extremely important, which is in the curriculum itself. Small changes come in, the Bloom's taxonomy is brought in, etc. But still, essentially, what are we asking children? Let me take mathematics, for example. What really do you see in mathematics? You have a supervisor question. Three men can dig a hole in 3 days. How many men can dig the same hole in one day? This is a supervisor question. A young child now will tell you, bring in a JCB, bring in an excavator, it'll dig that hole in whatever time you want, depending on how much pressure you put in. Second type of question, one sack of potato is so much. How many sacks of potato can you buy with so much money? One pen costs. So these are supervisor and marketing questions. And if you keep on asking these questions, what are you doing? You're developing a child to be a consumer. You're developing a child to be a supervisor, but you're not really asking them to ask questions that are relevant to them. For example, let me take chemistry. Now, I can take every subject and I can probably break it down this way because this is what I've been doing for 25 years and I'm hated for it. So the second type of thing is questions in chemistry. You're always teaching them how to extract something from its ore, like silver from its ore, iron from its ore, but you're not teaching children how to combat pollution, right? Chemistry used well can also be used for effluent treatment, but we are not asking that. It's a small chapter in the last part of chemistry, applications of chemistry, but we're not making that the core syllabus. So if you're going to look at only plundering, that's a very imperialistic way of asking questions. How do I plunder? How do I take ore? Yes, extracting something from its ore is extremely important. I'm not saying no, but you also need to ask questions that are relevant for today. What are the problems today that can be solved from my academic progress? And it should not be limited. And by this, I'm not saying that education should be completely utility driven. Okay, that's also very unfair. But if it cannot lead to problem solving and addressing problems that are there, I am not shaping the mindset of the child. And I am not going to make a child who, so by the time the child grows up into an adult, becomes an entrepreneur, figures out what problems need to be addressed, we are really wasting it. So I can give you another example. I don't want to name the country, but there are countries that are investing in AI that are going way ahead of us. And here in India, we are sitting and developing AI and apps that are food delivery, that are product delivery. Our maximum apps, if you look at it, are some form of consuming. We are not looking at some form of contribution, right? So somewhere I feel that the whole system is around the consumption aspect of it. And the moment I'm a consumer, I'm not going to look at success from the eyes of being a contributor. The true definition of success is where I am able to identify my skill sets. I'm able to identify problems in my environment. And based on these two, I become a genuine contributor. And when I'm able to do this, then my consumption is going to be very meaningful and mindful. When I do not do this, I'm going to be somebody who is going to, meaninglessly and mindlessly consume and not make an impact on life. I may make a lot of money. I may spend millions on a wedding which is publicized all over the world, but it will not have any value to anybody else. So I hope I'm making sense on that. The second, so this is from the school system and from the teaching angle. When I come to the adults, I'm talking about parents right now, and I know many of you as teachers are also parents. First thing in our parenting, Eastern systems, we are all relationship driven, and about 95% of parenting books in the market are very Western, task driven. Okay. So using these models in our relationship driven culture is quite unhealthy. So I'll give you an example. For example, in the US, or if you take in certain parts of Europe, when the child does something, appreciation is used or recognition is used as a way to encourage that behavior. Many of these behaviors were actually, these things were tested on animals. These were animal studies, and they came from the work of people like Skinner, people like Pavlov, who believed that you can develop behaviors by conditioning. However, in a relationship driven culture, we need to understand that children work because they love somebody or they feel safe in the presence of somebody. The value of connection. Now, a simple example: if somebody feels safe enough, they will try to do something. So those of you who are teachers here, those of you who are parents here, you will understand that your favorite subject was your favorite subject because that teacher was your favorite teacher. Very often, your favorite subject became your favorite subject only because of the connection and the safety that you experienced in the presence of the adult who was caring. Similarly, parenting and teaching, the relationship that I build with my child is the single most important aspect of anything that we will do all through life. So, as a parent, there are three very, very, very important aspects of parenting that I need to use. And if you can use the same model in your teaching, it's going to make a huge difference. The first is build your connection very, very mindfully. By this I mean, please don't do fake appreciation, fake praise and things like that. I always use the story in all of my in all of my sessions. And in one of the schools that I used to work with, the child who was the naughtiest, I mean, he was quite a nightmare for all the teachers. He would always get the good behavior sticker, and the school would give stickers to all the children, reinforcement. And every day he would have this good behavior. I'm the best behaved in my class. So I went and asked him, how do you get this good behavior sticker when all the time your teachers are complaining that you are very, very difficult to work with? So he said, ma'am, it's very, very easy. Our school is 8 kilometers outside the city, and there is no public transport from our school back into the city. And I know that my teacher has to leave the class at 3:30 if she has to board the bus at 3:40, because she has to go sign, hand over, and get to the bus. Exactly at 3:30, I stand at the entrance of the classroom and I say, ma'am, if you don't give me the sticker, I will not let you go home. So immediately the teacher takes the sticker and she puts it on my face. And that's how I get the sticker every day. The moment you start having tangible reinforcements and rewards, children will learn how to manipulate them. I remember also, I can give you many, many examples on how reinforcement doesn't work. Right now, the child is already struggling with writing, and you're saying, write neatly. The child actually at that point requires support, not appreciation or correction. Because in a supportive environment, the child finds it easier to acquire the skill, especially post COVID. And I'm sure most of the teachers and school heads here will agree with me, especially post COVID, the kind of challenges that we are facing within the classroom are extremely high. So we need to understand that anything that we used pre-COVID as a correction method needs to change. What was missing during COVID was healthy human interaction that is so essential for this relational being whose nervous system and the emotional system are definitely developed only through interaction. So, for this, the most important thing is instead of constantly correcting children, and by that I'm saying giving them tangible reinforcements all the time, which can be negative or positive, I need to let them know that I'm right here and I'm going to be able to listen to them and I'm going to help them acquire the skills. And this can be even in grade 9, where the child says, Ma'am, I don't know what career to choose. My father wants this, my mother wants this, my brother, my uncle's brother, everybody is saying, one different field. What do you think I should do? And at that point, if I'm able to sit down there and help the child discover his own or her own skill set, it's going to be much, much more important than just blindly saying, yeah, this is the job that's going to be there in the future. What the child is asking you is not really some kind of information, because believe me, they know how to find information. They are way ahead of us on technology and they know how to ask for information. But what they are really looking for is an adult who says, it's okay, my dear, if you make a mistake, I'm right here. And it's okay to not know exactly what you want. Believe me, psychology was not my first field. It was definitely not what I wanted to do in life. But once it became the field, once it became apparent that this is what I was going to pursue for various reasons, I needed to make the best of it. So we'll need to know that we will never be able to make the best decisions in our life. And anyone who's been here will tell me that you made many decisions. Some of them did not work out, right? Whatever decision you make, you don't need to know all the information that there is. Whatever decision you make, go ahead and make it the right decision by your actions that follow the decision. Because if you're going to be overthinking the whole thing, planning it, going back and forth, asking people for advice, you may not really have the opportunity that the decision can give you. The next aspect, so the first thing is how we build the connection. The second and the most important is communication. As adults, children need only one rule in communication: listen, don't lecture. Okay, because what happens the moment the child comes, even as young as 3 or 4 years old, they come and say, today my ma'am shouted at me, or my ma'am said I was very naughty. Immediately there is one entire lecture that comes, and the child says, oh my god, now if I go and tell them everything, they're going to lecture me, they're going to do something. So then the child says, what happened in school? Oh, nothing happened today. So what really needs to happen is a listening adult. And by that, what I'm trying to say is not just listening blindly, but to also give them feedback as you're listening, what can and cannot be done. So when we move to the interaction part, I can elaborate on this based on the questions that come from you, because I don't want to, give you too much on that one. The third and the most important, so I'm saying everything is most important. So I said connection is most important. Then I said communication is most important. The third point is model, don't manipulate. And by this, I mean that whatever you do will speak much louder than whatever you say. And this is where I'd like to use a story, because stories speak louder. There was a missionary who was spreading the word in Japan. He was traveling from island to island. He had the religious book in his hand, and he would go and he would speak to the people, talk to them about this, and then he would hand over the religious book. It so happened that a very elderly gentleman, about 90, 95 years old, he sent his servant to the person, to the missionary, and he said, please tell him to come and meet me. I want to know what message he is spreading. So immediately the servant went to his house, and late in the night, around 9 o'clock, he asked him, sir, there is this elderly person. Can you please come and see him tomorrow? So this man, he said, no, no, I've already gone to that village. I don't want to come back again. Please take him this religious book. And he kept on pushing that book to the servant. So finally, the servant took the book very reluctantly, but he said, sir, whatever is said and done, he is still reading you. He is not yet ready to read the book. And the point I'm trying to make is every child is reading the adults in their life, be it a teacher, be it a parent. What kind of book are you? Is a question I would ask. So, if you are the kind of book that helps them feel that they can make it in life, you're motivational, you're supportive, then it's going to make a difference. But if you're the one that's always putting them down, Comparing them with random people, it's going to be very, very difficult. So when we are talking about developing the mindset for success, a very, very important aspect is, what kind of model am I? Am I somebody who is, uh, I need not be necessarily successful, but am I somebody who's able to take experiences in my stride? Am I able to learn from my experiences? Am I able to make a difference through that? So this is something that will be very, very important. And the most important is, please don't praise children. That is probably the worst thing that you can do. Because what happens is, the moment you give them praise, very good job, excellent job, etc., which of course all the books and everything tell them, what happens is you're depriving the child of an opportunity to reflect on what can be done better. Because any person, any experience can be both a work in progress and a masterpiece at the same time, right? While I'm doing this session, I will have a lot of areas where I will learn. After the session, I would probably go back when the video comes out and say, okay, these are things I can improve upon. Okay, and say, oh, these are things that went on very well. So I'm able to do this as a person. When I need to understand that everybody will have a scope for growth, no matter how perfect or how well they've done something, am I able to model this for my child? Am I able to give them feedback? So very, very often we tell them, very good job, excellent job, you're very, very talented, etc. The child says, oh, I've now satisfied this adult, I don't need to improve upon it. So I remember this child was an extremely good artist. Right from the beginning, the moment she would see any material, she would start creating, and she was extremely good. The worst thing the parent did was to put the child in an art class. The moment the child went to the art class, the teacher saw the drawing, and the teacher kept on saying, oh, but this line you have to do it like this shading has to be done like this. But at home the parent kept praising. So now this child is getting two completely different feedbacks. One person who's just saying, excellent, excellent, very good for anything that she was doing, and the other person who was constantly correcting everything that she was doing. Now the child was going through extreme stress because she did not know if she was good, or she didn't, or that she needed to be corrected. So this is where this kind of a problem comes in. But right from the beginning, as a parent or as a teacher, if you can spend a little bit of time to give them feedback on what can be improved, and to give them feedback on what is really good, then the child understands that the same task can have two outcomes. And this becomes an extremely important aspect for leading life. To be able to lead, when I said, when you are successful, what will you have? And all of you said happiness, contentment, peaceful, all of these things. To have that, you will realize that nothing is an absolute outcome. Nothing is an absolute reality. Everything will have shades. And if I'm able to examine these, then I have a better attitude towards life. So school system, then I worked on parenting. Now, the most important thing, what are things I can do? Because I'd like to finish with the prescriptive, and then I leave it open for the interaction. I know I have about a few minutes, and then we'll move forward. So first thing, as an adult, whether I'm a teacher or as a parent, what are the things that I can do? First thing, your child has to have opportunities for free play. I know, when I say play is the most important thing, play is the single most important uh, task, or um, I mean, an ecosystem that has play is one that will create the most successful people. And I can give you many examples, but I'm going to use the example of this person, this psychologist whose research was published in a journal. So in a particular company where there were a lot of innovators, lot of great innovators came out of that company. When the senior innovators, the senior designers and engineers retired, they went to all the best institutes, the best of the best, the equivalents of our IITs and all of that, and they got the postdoc, the gold medalists and all of them. Unfortunately, they had no innovation at all. And after 3 years, the company brought in the psychologist, and they wanted him to find out why there is no innovation in such brilliant minds. So then he did what is called a play history. He went through the play history, and he realized that the first set of engineers and innovators were born after the Great Depression and the World War. They were born without toys. So whatever materials they found in their environment, they were able to create as toys. The second generation were doing these Olympiads for everything. They were going for classes and certifications all the time. The moment the child was doing only the quality control method, their innovation went down. So the first thing that you need to do is to allow for free play. And in free play, the first thing that you will not do is to buy. You will not buy anything that says it's educational, because play has three extremely important parts. One, the play that a child will experience is completely self-driven. Anything that is designed by an adult or through a product is called an activity. It cannot be play. Play is something that is self driven. The second aspect, it will come from the nervous system based on the challenge the child is facing and what the child needs to adapt. So, for example, if my teacher is teaching me writing in school, I will not be writing. I will be moving objects or playing with a car, forming shapes, moving an object in space, so that I know that when I use this object here, I will be able to use a pencil or a pen in my school, right? I will be able to drive the car, or follow an ant. I remember one of the children used to follow an ant on the wall with a pencil, and what the child was doing is to follow an object, and that is how she learned to follow the object, the chalk the teacher was using on the board. So the nervous system will identify, okay, this is what is expected, this is the kind of play I can give. And the third and the most important aspect of play, children lose themselves in it, they lose time. And you'll notice children who have played, if the mother goes and says, come, you have to study now, he says, Amma, I just started. Child would have played for 2 hours, but it will feel like it has just started. Play has that ability to keep the nervous system completely engaged and developing. So the first thing that as a parent or as a teacher I can give is to engage them through play, which is self-driven. The second most important thing that we will do is to celebrate failure. And the neurological reason why failure, I mean, we've all been told failure is part of the process, etc. I'm going to quote two things. One is Princeton University study, where they introduced a concept called intelligent fast failure. Intelligent fast failure means I have a goal and this is how I want to reach this goal, or I have a target and this is how I want to reach this target. From here to the target, whatever can go wrong, I create intelligent fast failure and I solve those failures as I go along, so that when I actually initiate the task, I know how to reach without a problem. So intelligent fast failure is one way in which we can quickly develop the mindset required for success. The second and the most important is, when I first learn a task, only the chemicals, the neurotransmitters in my brain change. But when I repeat the task through different modalities, so if I'm learning maths, if I'm learning addition, I learn it through objects, I learn it through pictures, I learn it through, what operations my teacher is teaching me, I learn it through many ways, then a synapse is formed in the brain. But the synapse is just equivalent to a copper wire. It will just disperse energy. Insulation is what helps the copper wire to conduct electricity. Similarly, when I make a mistake, myelin or white matter goes around the copper wire, goes around the synapse. So mistakes insulate the synapse so that learning is not dispersed. So learning is enabled by mistakes, not reduced by mistakes. And the faster we learn this, the attitude towards life changes. So this is the second. So play is first, and the second is failure, celebrating failure. The third is building resilience. And building resilience starts with adaptability. Allow children to fail. Don't shock proof your child. Don't become that, we call them the snowplow parents. Snowplow parents are the ones that clear out all the obstacles from the path so that the child will be able to go without any difficulty. Please ensure that your child does experience small amounts of U stress, EU stress, which is a healthy amount of stress required for good performance. Because when they experience that, they slowly build into their system the resilience required to deal with life. And if they don't have this, so can I give you another example? In Arizona, I think in the 1980s, early 1980s, they wanted to create an ecosystem where, it's completely within a certain restricted area. So the trees in that forest did not grow because there was no wind, because when the wind blows, the roots become stronger. Similarly, for a human being, when there are small amounts of stress, our ability to deal with life becomes stronger. So, parents and teachers need to give small levels of stress, which will help children to grow deeper in roots. And of course, goes without saying, please don't look for motivation. Please don't employ motivational speakers, because motivation does not come before the task, it always comes as a result of the task. What is really required is discipline, and it's always in the small things. I remember in my last project, I used to work for a management that used to shame me quite a bit for doing, looking at the small things. Why isn't this done? How can this be done? The small things. Children remember small things, like my ma'am smiled at me today. My ma'am gave me a high five. Ma'am said this can be done. It's in the small things. When we focus on the small things, the big picture falls in place. Very often what happens is people try to fix the big picture. The big picture is like pixels. If you get the pixels right, the big picture is perfect. So it's in the small things, and it's always in the discipline and the micro habits that we will have. This micro habits also give us micro recoveries. Micro recoveries are like when you're riding a cycle, you suddenly sort of balance yourself. You don't need to actually tell yourself, oh, I'm falling. The moment the body senses that there is a small change, it will do a recovery. So micro recoveries and micro joys are built into the small things. And emotional regulation goes without saying. When we go into the questions, I'll do emotional regulation a little more. And please, I want the whole of today's talk to end with just one small thing. Success is not about reaching goals. Success is about having an attitude that says, growth is my only goal. Irrespective of the outcome, growth is my only goal. So the moment you're able to do that, whatever you need for entrepreneurship, which is problem solving, which is adaptability, which is your financial skills, all these can be learned, because the skills required for entrepreneurship and success are completely learnable. But the attitude comes from the fact that I understand that life will always be growth driven and not just goal driven. Because once you're growth driven and you have the regular discipline for it, and you're able to build in the resilience, have play, and celebrate failure, you know how to make it in life.
You said about communication, and you wanted to elaborate on it. So, can we begin with that?
So communication is not about speaking, listening. So you need to understand that nervous system has a very, very clear blueprint. And very often, when you take any of the traditional books on communication, they talk about eye contact, they talk about body language, etc., etc. But however, in the current generation, because they have been exposed to digital technology much earlier than others and everything, there are some specific rules that we follow for communication. And I understand that many of them work with teenagers. So there's a very simple set of rules that I would like to bring in. First, if you want to communicate with anybody, a connection must be established first. Okay. Without a connection, the communication will never be two-way. That's the first aspect. So here I would like to emphasize, a lot of parents are, especially because both of them are working, etc., they become conflict resolution parents. Did you finish your homework? What did ma'am say? Tomorrow, what do you have to take to school? This kind of thing. So the communication is very, very limited. There are two things that I'd like parents to understand. If you really wish to build a communication with your child, you need to develop what is called a connection ritual. And this has to go on for at least 21 days, which means every day, at least for 15 minutes. And if you can spend more time, build something that both of you really enjoy doing. So, for example, if both of you like to go for a walk, both of you like to play badminton, do something that both of you enjoy. And this is a time that you're not going to correct each other, advise each other, tell them 15 years back, this is what we used to do. None of that. It's a very fun time where you're letting the child know that this is a safe space and both of us can communicate at this time. Typical teenager, for the first 1 week, they will test your limits. So you need to realize that just stay consistent. Say, no, I'd like to build this connection. And there should be no third person, like let's play video games together, let's watch IPL together. It'll not be that. It'll be a communication related ritual. Once the ritual is set, the child feels a little more comfortable. And if you're working with a boy, please walk with him and speak, because men are generally spatial processors. They are able to process information better when they're moving. If you make a boy sit down, especially a teenager sit down and speak, he's going to keep drumming the table, moving his feet, all of these things, and it will irritate the parent. So it's very important to move with the teenager and speak. And if you're speaking with a girl, make her sit beside you. Don't do this eye contact. Because the moment you sit beside her, she feels a little more comfortable to speak to you. And the most important is when you want to specifically target something, you want to talk about career, you want to talk about digital addiction, you let them also prepare the topic. You will also prepare the topic. Let them speak first. And when they do that, whatever is valid, make a note and bring it in as a change in your behavior. Because the moment your child sees that you're modeling change, they will also feel open to change. But on the other hand, most parents or teachers say, you first do it, then I'll tell you how to do it. Then it becomes a problem. And the most important, never end communication with one time. Like if I started talking about career, don't do it as one topic, one session, and then take them to a career guidance person and forget about it. Have mini micro conversations often, which are not lecture type, but more discussion type. So if you do this, it works very well. And the most important, just before they go to bed, if you can spend the last 5 minutes with them, do a debrief. What did you really enjoy today? What was beautiful about today? So these kind of things, when you have in the last few minutes, let them know that they are very precious and that you really love them. These messages, as they when they listen to it as they go to sleep, it builds the kind of skills that we cannot even imagine possible. So I hope that makes contextual sense.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Um, we have another question from Arpita, ma'am. Madam, could you please give some examples on how to give feedback for correction and how for a work done good?
Are you a teacher? Or are you a parent?
Yeah, I think she's a teacher.
Okay. See, the
Might be a
first thing
parent
is,
also. Yeah.
okay. Either way, whenever, if it is feedback for a task, okay, there are two states, being and doing. So doing is a task, being is for the person. So when you're giving feedback on the person for the being state, you can say, I really love the way you helped this person, or I really like the way you were able to sit quietly and listen to this. So if there is a quality that you observed about them, then give them specifics. Don't say you're a good boy, good girl, you're excellent. Don't give that. Give them specifically, I really like the way, you know, you have this compassion in you, or I love the way you communicate. I love the way you listen. So that is one. But when it is for a task, look at the task. First of all, you need to be very objective. See, as human beings, we'll all have, our judgments and everything. Keep your judgments aside. So let's say the child is submitted an essay to you, and I'm assuming you're a teacher. So in the essay, just go through whatever the aspects of presentation are. Go on the technical side. On the technical side, please pick 2 or 3 points which are really good, and 1 or 2 things which can be improved. So for example, the child may need to improve spelling, or may need to improve the way that they're presenting a particular fact, or they don't have facts, they've just written what they've heard. So take points technically which are really good and what can be improved, and give that as feedback, saying, I really love this about what you have presented, but these areas, if you are able to improve it like this, and give them an example of how it can be. So for example, the child has written opinions instead of giving you facts. You can say, this is an opinion because it does not have any backing, but this is a fact, and a fact usually has this. And you can also say that sometimes if you're not sure if it's a fact or an opinion, then you can say, in my humble opinion, and you can say it. You say, I would like to find ways in which this can be proved. So these kind of ways in which you give feedback is extremely important. The other way is when the child has made a genuine mistake, how do you give feedback? So let's say the child has hit somebody, child has done something that is not acceptable, then you need to let them know, see, what you've done is not acceptable in the classroom, or this is not something, what you did hurt somebody. Give them what it really did, what their action really meant to somebody else, or what it caused. For example, because you were not able to submit your work on time, it has affected your internal marks. So these kind of feedbacks you need to specifically let them know. And you can tell them, see, if you're not able to make the submission because you don't know how to organize your time, if you're not able to understand, you were not well, specifically give them feedback on that. And then tell them, if you would like help on this, the support that you need, you can meet me on Tuesday at so and so time. I will be able to help you. So give them specific feedback and let them know if you will be able to support them on it. So these are some of the examples that I can give you on how you can give feedback to the child. Okay. And believe me, it will not happen the first time. Children will test your limits. So that's where you need to be a little consistent so that the children understand that even if they give me feedback, she is somebody who cares. That's why she's consistent. Because one time you're very kind. The next time you're saying, if you do this, I'll take you to principal's office. Then the child is going to say, oh, she doesn't really mean it. So just follow through with consistency. Usually the behavior changes. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, ma'am. And ma'am, Lakshmi Iyer has asked, children nowadays have a very fragile sense of self-worth. In that context, how would not praising a child for a job well done lead to increased confidence and maximize the child potential? I think a similar question is also asked by Suman Kumar. Ma'am, you said we are not supposed to praise students so that they are still eager to improve further. What if they think, sir or ma'am never praised, though I tried my best, and may lead to discourage to those child? Can you give more insight about it? Seems like little contradictory.
Praise is where you're not taking accountability and you're not making the person responsible. Okay. Praise is something that is very, very shallow. On the other hand, when you give them feedback, it helps build the self worth. And self worth, in fact, is negatively correlated with praise. Because the moment you start getting a person used to praise, it will lead to what is called validation seeking. They're going to constantly keep seeking validation, whereas it's not going to build self worth. So, firstly, please understand that praise and appreciation do not really build self worth. What really builds self worth is one, supportive, safe ecosystem where I feel that, when I express myself, I will have support, I will be encouraged, etc. The old model of reinforcement and punishment, yes, just talks about praise, etc. But what I use as a mantra is support, don't shame. Because what happens is when I create a supportive ecosystem, which means all the other peers also are supporting me, everybody is able to give me feedback, everybody is able to let me know that, if you're not able to do this, I can support you in this way, then it really works. So it's not contradictory in any way. I've not contradicted myself either. But self-worth is something that is very, very driven from within. It is not driven by validation, recognition, all these things are very, very on the outside. They're very tangible and they're very, very easy for school systems to adopt because you can say, okay, I gave them stickers, I gave them a good, I gave them this, etc., etc. And the parent is also happy with that. But to truly build the psyche, to build the self worth from within, the child needs to know, they need to have the autonomy that when I make a mistake, I can rise from this. So, on the other hand, what you can do is give healthy feedback, you can develop problem solving skills, and you can create an ecosystem of support which helps them long term. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am, for that explanation. We have another question from Swati. How to give a feedback to teenager students, like adult student, and if you meet your student after many years, like you taught them when they were teens, and you meet them in their 30s and see them doing well.
So what feedback I think I've given the feedback aspect of it already and communication aspect already. Does she need any specific clarification of that? Because I've given both.
Yeah, I think that's yeah, I think that's I mean she's not asking for anything more, I guess. Can we move on to another question, ma'am?
Yeah.
Taslim Malik has asked, just think of one moment when a child feels proud, not because he or she talks, but because he or she tries, improves, or overcomes fear. How should a teacher respond at that moment?
So don't do the good job, etc. So it's a beautiful question, Tasneem. Thank you so much for asking this. See, because that's what I mentioned: micro joys, micro recoveries, etc. Right? Sometimes it's very important. Just put your hand on their shoulder because some of this really, really good feedback is non-verbal. Okay, so it can be a high five, it can be, just say, wow, this is really nice, and you can even directly verbalize it. If you've observed so much, the child has overcome fear, you can say, I saw that you were really scared to do this, but at the same time you went ahead and you were able to conquer this. I am so proud of you. And you can say, I am proud of you. right? Saying that, you appreciate what they've done. Or you can say, I would have also been scared in your situation, but you were able to conquer it faster than I did. It can be genuine feedback like that. So the moment you put yourself in that position and say what that person did impacted you, that is the most genuine feedback, the most authentic feedback that you can give somebody. So that is something that you can do, and it'll usually help them feel. Usually, what happens is they're already feeling that really great emotion, like you mentioned in your question. And when you agree with that, or you give them feedback saying that you also noticed it, that itself makes a huge impact. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, ma'am. Miss Swati, ma'am, has
Yeah,
clarified her
she's asked.
question. Like, will
Yeah, please.
appreciation help even after years? Do students expect a reassurance?
So appreciation is different, reassurance is different. Appreciation is just of the task or something very good, well done, etc. But reassurance is where you're also letting them know that there is a connection component. Appreciation can happen even without a connection, right? I can appreciate, oh, very good, excellent. Sometimes, when you're a teacher, you're correcting 40 books, you're just so bogged down. So you say, ah, okay, well done, well done. Ma'am, tell me, is it good, ma'am? Yeah, yeah, it's good. You don't really spend time to look at it. But when you say reassurance, you'll say, I really like what you've done, but I'm busy right now. Can we meet in a little while? And then I'll give you feedback on it. That can be done. And again, if you're asking when they're adults and they're about 30 years old or they're 25 years old and they're saying, ma'am, did I do well? And I would ask them, where is this coming from? What are you scared of now? Is there something that's challenging you? So you ask them, get them to speak, get them to share. Because once they're able to sound that out, you know exactly where the problem is coming from, and they're not really looking for appreciation. At that age, if they're asking you, Swati, you've done something well, you've done something right, because they feel that I can reach out to this person and she will still be there for me. So I think instinctually you have that ability to reach out and touch a life. I think if you're just present in that moment, you will be able to give them the reassurance that they're looking for. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, another question from Kiran. I
Yeah.
have just stepped out of student life and I still feel the pressure to chase big definitions of success, like high grades, big jobs, and constant achievement. But part of me feels drawn to a simpler, peaceful life, even to things like farming or living close to nature. How can someone in my position understand what success really means and find a healthy balance between ambition and a life that actually feels meaningful?
Beautiful question, Kiran. And I think there's no simple way to answer it. And by that, I'll also put it in context. Farming and living a simple life are also not in any way less ambitious. They're also ambitions. Okay. No ambition is less or more. I just need you to know if there are many tangible rewards involved, then the kind, meaning like money, position, etc., the kind of effort required is going to be very external. But however, if you're going to look at, being more content, being more peaceful, living a simpler life, then the kind of effort required is more internal, reflection related. But where I would ask you to really look at, and it's very difficult because your generation also has a lot of visual media that is constantly confusing you about what is the ideal life to live. You should have so much money, or you should have reached this. In fact, every story on certain apps will be, I grew up in so much poverty, I studied under the street light, and then now I'm running a 300 crore business. You don't have to do any of those things. The first thing is, ask yourself, is this something that will use my skill sets? Okay, that's where I would start. I mean, whatever I've studied for, whatever skill sets I have, is this something that will happen? Second thing I would ask, is this more consumption or contribution? Because if it is more consumption, it's something that you may want to question. Third, is this something that I would like to pursue all through my life, or is this just something short term? And I want you to also realize that you may never need, you don't need to have it all figured out right in day one, right? As you start working, you'll realize that, some more things add, and you will constantly keep pruning. Whatever doesn't work, you'll have to let that go and you'll have to keep moving, because life does work that way. But having said this, I would also ask you, try everything, you know do reach out for those big goals also. If it works, good. If it doesn't work, good. But you would have at least done that, because it should never be, 10 years later, maybe I should have done this, right? So whatever is drawing your attention right now, focus on that. And don't, anxiety comes when you try to control the outcome. But if you're able to mindfully look at it right now, I would only ask you, Kiran, to have a healthy equation with time. You should have nostalgia, you should have mindfulness in the present, and you should be able to dream for the future. If you're able to balance your dreams, your lessons from the past, and your ability to synthesize the present, life will beautifully fall in place. So I hope that gives you context.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We
Yeah.
have another question here. When comparison starts affecting a child's self-esteem, what early signs should parents look for, and how can we respond in a healthy way, healthy, supportive way?
In each age, comparison symptoms will be different. In the initial years, it will be very rivalry related. You always like that person, you don't like me. It will be comparing to a sibling, comparing to a cousin, comparing to a friend. You always like them. You think they are beautiful. It will be something like that. Or you will see in their play constantly, the mothers preferring one more child. They narrate stories where they're only talking about, one child, but the other child is missing. Those kind of things will be what will be very obvious. But across age groups, one of the things is that they will become very clingy and crying when, when they're not getting their way. Another thing that they may become is very withdrawn. They feel that I will never be heard or seen. So that is something. So in any situation, when it is comparison, some children will have, direct communication saying, I don't like it that you're comparing. But when it comes to teenagers, it will cut off the connection with you permanently. They say, okay, anyway, you're going to compare, you do what you want. I will stay in my room. I don't want to come to anybody's house. That kind of disconnect will happen. So my only suggestion is, in those days, in the earlier days, comparison was used more as a teaching tool. We did not have so much media. So if somebody in our village or somebody in our city or somebody made it very big in life, they would talk about it in all the weddings and all the family functions, so that people from the village or city will realize, oh, you have these opportunities. Now we don't need to use comparison as a tool for exposure, because there are many tools for exposure. So if we realize the context why comparison came in, we will never use it. And the most important thing is, at any point you feel you have a doubt, reach out to somebody who's professionally trained, so that they will be able to help you through it. But as a parent, if you feel you may not be able to reach out for help, stay present and listen to your child. Don't try to fix their problems all the time. Sometimes just actively listening to your child when they're communicating something is more therapeutic than anything else that you can do. So I hope that helps you understand what you can do.
Ma'am, we have another question from Justin. Ma'am, you talked about not praising children, and I believe intrinsic motivation should drive the children. How can we cultivate that, and what classroom activities or strategies can we use to foster it in students?
First thing, let me say, this intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation, all of these things are very old. And though they are not completely away from reality, I'll say neuroscience has a very different way of looking at it. The reward mechanism, etc., very different. So I'd like you to just understand, Justin, one thing. To be intrinsically motivated, I need to have a lot of opportunities for reflection, self reflection. Because intrinsically, if I need to drive myself to do something, I must have the ability to look within, to see what drives me, to see what I can change, how I can grow. And for reflection, the debrief example that I gave earlier, when you sit with a child, ask them, what did you really like about life, or about what you did today? Who are your favorite people? A lot of questions that lead to reflection are usually really, really great ways in which you can develop that ability to look inwards. Because without looking inwards, and you're only looking at tangible outcomes like marks, etc., you will not be able to build this. Classroom activities wise, once your child fin any task that you've given, you can ask the children. See, one way is to just correct the answers and say this is the right answer, this is the wrong answer. That is the fastest way to destroy intrinsic motivation. But what you can do is to ask questions to the child, saying, what part of this exercise or what part of this task do you think you've done well, or you've done the best? Okay, which part of this exercise was extremely difficult? So while you were solving that problem, what did you acquire? So depending on the age, you can ask questions like that so that the child realizes that every task has small micro tasks, and I can slowly keep perfecting these or making progress in all of these things. So when I know this, I'm able to become more motivated. So it's always in the small things, like I said. So to bring in intrinsic motivation, because you use that word, I would say start small. Start with questions, start with reflection, and that'll be the best way to work with it. And then once the child has developed this, you can ask them to give the worksheet or whatever to the other child and say, why don't you give me feedback? Let them take criticism and feedback from other people. So these are ways in which you will develop intrinsic motivation and also build in resilience. So these are ways in which this can be taken forward. So I hope that gives you tips.
Ma'am, Jillian has asked, ma'am, I think it has to be praise what is really good or appreciable, and suggest or advise as and where it is needed.
That's exactly what I said. So I think we just have to agree that we said the same thing in different words.
Yes. And we have another question from Sinu Kuriakos. How would a person who is really low at marks come to the topper?
You've asked me my entire 25 years of psychology in one question. Uh, let me put it very simple. See, when you're saying low end marks, you're saying you're only going to look at the quality control system. Okay. Why are the marks low? Is it because I'm not able to learn? Is it not because is it because I'm not able to understand? Is it because I don't have the ability to pick up spelling? Is it because I'm not able to pick up math? What are the skill sets that are making me lose marks? This is the question I would first ask. Okay. But before I go there, I would examine the readiness for learning. The second, I would understand what are the skill sets the child has and how I can start. As a teacher, if you're a teacher and you're asking this, I would say look at the learner. When you look at the learner, instead of making the learner look at you, when you look at the learner, you will understand why the child is struggling, where the child is struggling. Having worked in villages all my life and worked across even international schools and all that, I can tell you that every child, when they have a skill, they will want to showcase it. So if the child is not showcasing something, what are the skills that I, as a teacher, can bring into this child is the question I would ask. So if the marks are going down because I didn't understand, then I would set activities or I would change my teaching in a way that the child will understand. If it is because the child is not able to write, then I would see, are there motor skills that I need to develop? Are there other skills that need to be, brought in remedially, things like that. So it is a large question because that itself is like one entire hour of a session. So I'm just saying start with readiness, look at skill sets. Third, create a supportive way in which you can address the actual problem. So I hope that gives context.
And ma'am, Sri Priya has asked how to support a teenager who has very low self-esteem and self-worth. She's a parent.
See, teenage is the age when they need a lot of social skills. Okay. They need their cliques, they need to be with the peer group. So if low self-worth has already come in the teen years, please check if the interpersonal relationships are okay. Because as a parent in the teen years, there is very little that you can do because a lot of their relational skills are centered around their peer group. And by this, I'm not saying family can't do anything. I'm saying that a major part will be from here. So you need to see what contributed towards this. So you need to see in early parenting, was there a lot of a lot of discrepancy in what you were doing, etc., etc. And you may not be able to fix all of that right now, but you can start small. You can start with small things that you can do with your child together, where they're able to experience a little bit of autonomy and independence. Because autonomy and independence, where I take initiative, I do something, and I do feel I've done a great job, etc., do add a little bit of value to self-worth and self-esteem. But that alone will not be enough. Secondly, please don't do fake affirmations, etc., etc. Affirmations are great at some level, but when the child is already struggling at some level, just an affirmation will not inflate anything. At that point, you may need to sit down with your child, spend a little more time building a relationship, find out how their interpersonal skills are, how they're working with other teens, etc., and see if they're able to make healthy relationships. Because once children are able to build healthy relationships, that becomes the If you've seen in the circus, you have that safety net, right? The safety net is always required for you to be able to examine your self worth and self esteem. And self worth and self esteem, unlike what many people believe, are not always influenced by our achievements. Achievements may contribute to a very small part of it, but the real work happens when we are able to examine and accept ourselves as we are, and then from there build healthy relationships through which I will be able to build back my confidence. So I hope that gives context to what the parents' question is.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, we have, I know the time is already not enough,
No,
but
it's
we
okay.
have
If
few
people
more
are willing to
questions. Is it
stay, I
okay to
don't
take
mind.
it up?
I don't mind. I am free.
Okay,
If
ma'am.
people would like to stay, they can stay. I can
Okay.
answer some of the questions.
Yeah, we have still more questions coming up.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
sure.
I
I know
think we
it'll
can
keep
take it
coming.
up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Ma'am, we have a question from Nimisha. Ma'am, if a child has no trust in anyone, at least to share the problem, how can we deal with the child?
See, trust is a very complex equation. Trust is something that is always developed in a relational context. Okay. Now, trust is not something that I will just get as an individual. Oh, I'm going to be a trusting person. It doesn't happen that way. The child has reached a point where he or she cannot trust somebody because they have been constantly let down by the various people that they have interacted with, probably the primary caregiver, probably friends, and so on. To build back trust is a very complex aspect. So please, as a teacher or if you're a counselor, please don't force, because that is not going to help them in any way. But however, trust is not something that's impossible to build, but it takes time. It's a very time consuming process. And secondly, and more importantly, it comes when there is consistency. Trust is something that is built when the person is consistent. So you don't need to be extremely supportive, extremely something. Be balanced. If you are balanced, for example, so let's assume that I have a problem with trust. Then what happens is the people who interact with me, if I see that this person is the same standard person every day, I will trust this person over somebody who's coming one day being extremely friendly, extremely, talkative and all that. And then for 10 days, they're missing. Like I already mentioned, it's in the small things. Trust is built in everyday small incremental steps. And sometimes you need to understand that people who've already lost trust at that level will go through cycles. Sometimes they will trust you and then they will test you, then they will trust you, then they will test you. It will go through these phases. So if you're ready to do that, then step in and work with the student or child. It'll make a big difference. Okay? So I hope that answers your question.
We have another question from Suja Kumari MG. Ma'am, how do we handle situations where few children spoil the learning environment for others? And how do we handle students who repeat the same behavior even after appreciation and counseling?
This is exactly why I'm saying don't appreciate. It's a give feedback. I'm going back again there. But having said this, there will always be children who will be disruptive in the classroom. And um, see, children need to feel a sense of belonging if they need to stop misbehaving. Okay. Whenever you see disruptive behavior where they're avoiding tasks or people, you need to understand that they're experiencing a lack of belonging in the classroom. And it could have started at anything. It could have started with, some small incident between the teacher and the student. It could have happened with, the peer group. It doesn't matter. But I need you to understand that in the teen years, they will have their gangs. Okay. You don't go and disrupt the gang. You need to understand they will have a gang, and the gang will try to misbehave also. Now you need to understand, is this age appropriate? Are they doing this just to, sort of feel special and all of that? If you're a wise teacher, you will realize how many of these incidents can be ignored and how many need correction. Because what will happen if they see that you are losing control and you are helpless, they will misbehave more, right? Whereas if you are able to bring in some kind of a belongingness task, and by this I'm saying, let's say, so I can give you a lot of examples. So there was this one student who was extremely good, very intelligent, very, very good with science and all of that. But in any class in the whole day, morning 9 to evening 4, he would misbehave in every teacher's classroom. And I remember that, we took him out of the class and we sort of made him steer the entire STEM program for a lower grade. Like he was in grade 9, I think, and we made him develop the STEM curriculum for grade 6 along with one of the teachers, a slightly younger teacher. He really enjoyed that task. The moment he started doing that and he started understanding that his behavior has an impact on other people, we noticed that his behavior, that disruptive behavior in the classroom, went down. So I'm not saying that you will find a quick fix, but if you can find ways in which children can feel a sense of belonging. For me, it came through a geography teacher who made geography very, very interesting for me. So those kind of small things where you identify that this child has something and you're able to use it in a context where they experience belonging and not just appreciation will make a huge difference. And it's time consuming. I'm not saying, ma'am, that, Suja, ma'am, that, you start today and tomorrow the child will pick it up. Anything of value takes time to build. And sometimes up to 3 months or 6 months. Are we ready to do that? If we are ready to do that, it makes a difference. So I hope that answers the question.
Ma'am, another question from Lakshmi Iyer. Some teenagers deal with immense academic pressure by showing overconfidence. Though we know that they need help, how do we go around the defensive wall that they have built around themselves?
Ma'am, it's not overconfidence, it's overcompensation. Let me put it that way. Because when I'm saying overconfidence, it comes actually from a feeling of not being valuable enough or not being good enough. See, somebody who is confident will be very, very clear about how they communicate. If they like something, they'll let people know, and it's okay if they dislike them. That authenticity is extremely important. So when the child is doing this is what Alfred Adler at one point had called the inferiority complex. The inferiority complex is not where the person feels inferior. They will mask it by feeling superior or showing that they're superior. So, this is where, as a parent or as a teacher, what I would ask you to do is to break down the task in simple ways and say, okay, what parts of these can we learn together? Can we do additionally? So, you know that the child, so for example, in maths, there are 6, 7 chapters. He's very good with, A, B, C units. He's struggling with a particular unit. So you can break that down and say, these are things that you are confident about. Would you like to teach this to someone? And you can have another student teach that to him. So these kind of small paired activities work very well for some children. And if you feel that this is not a child who wants to do that, you can see how you want to support it together. Like, ultimately, you are going to let them know that I see that you have skill sets here and I see that you're struggling here, but you're not going to say this is a struggle. Say, let's do this together. Because the moment you build, so that's why I'm saying connection, connection, connection so many times. The moment you say we're doing it together, you're not saying that, you learn it, you do it. Because the moment you do that, it becomes easier for them to say, yeah, I know this is one area that I need support. It's a very, very simple way to let them know you're not alone. I'm there for you. So I think that is where you would start with this. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, thank you so much for that. Ma'am, we have another question from Preeti Puri. Thanks for this beautiful talk. I would like to comment on the role of educators in the recent incidents of children. Why are only teachers held responsible?
Ma'am, I know it's a very, very lopsided way because, the schooling model itself, and I'm sorry, I know Rajagiri does a lot of free work, but I know overall most of the schools are being very commercially driven also. And it's nothing against anybody. But when it becomes that way, uh, assigning blame is always easier than taking responsibility. And I see that happening across. And it's not just in certain cases, like if I speak to teachers, they say, the parents are not doing this at home. When I speak with the parents, they say the teacher's not doing this. Somewhere I feel if we can all together build bridges and build trusting equations, this whole thing will change. And I know it's not an easy solution, but I've been working on it for 25 years now. And I know that, when we build these trusting equations, we create a better ecosystem for our children. So I hope that gives an answer. I know that I may not be able to take away the pain of the teacher who has been wrongly accused or, made to take responsibility for something they didn't do. We do live in a world where, sometimes some people are played as pawns. It's not nice. But having said that, please let me also reassure you that there are people like me, ma'am, and I would look at both sides of the story because nothing is created only from one side. So I hope that gives you a little bit of reassurance, if not what you were looking for.